You're listening to the Huddle Up Podcast with Chad Jensen and Zack Kelberman. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com and sound off. And now it's time to drop some knowledge.
We're live, but we got to let the stream breathe just for a few seconds while we make sure all of our streaming channels are online with us. We got to get 5 gorgeous green check marks. And we're good. Welcome in, everybody, to the Huddle Up Podcast, presented, as always, by Mile High Huddle and powered by Overtime Media. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, and with me, as always, is my partner in crime, my fellow football priest. And we've been exercising a lot of demons the last few days. You know him, you love him. He is Zack Kelberman. Zack, I thought it was interesting today. Of course, I want to talk a lot about, on today's episode, the closing of the ranks that has occurred at Broncos HQ around Drew Lock, which I think is key. But one thing I wanted to talk to you about first and get your take on was something Drew Lock said during his media availability on Wednesday. And the thing he brought up when asked about Jeudy, it was really interesting because we've kind of been pounding the table the last 2 weeks. And really since Drew Lock re-entered the lineup as the starter in week 6, Jeudy has disappeared basically from the game plan. We've been pounding the table. And he talked about today that he's looking good. He had a really good practice. And in fact, Zack, one thing that was interesting is in the huddle today, things were maybe a little looser than Jeudy would have liked. And he jumped on the huddle, right? He tightened it up. He's like, come on, guys, tighten it up. Let's go, which you don't often hear. In fact, here's the direct quote. He said, I've seen a big flip of a switch from Jeudy, talking in the huddle, being vocal. He told the huddle to tighten up today, which was, as a wide receiver and a rookie, not necessarily his responsibility, Zack, to make the huddle, make sure the huddle is tight. It's definitely mine in the O-line. But he went in there and got vocal. I thought it was awesome. Close quote. Is that a rookie overstepping his bounds, Zack, or is that just what's your take on that?
Nah, the Broncos coming off a pretty deflating loss, I shall say, where the offense was MIA. You want any sort of spark right now. I'm not going to beat this dead horse too much, but you would think the fire in the huddle, get them together, tighten them up. Where is the coaching? Once again, either Fangio or Pat Shurmur, why aren't they stepping in? If there's a problem in the huddle, if there's a lack of fire, a lack of passion, a lack of want to, it stems from the coaching. They take the complexity of their coaches. Failing that, Jeudy speaking up, I don't have a problem, though I think a lot of his other teammates will kind of tune him out because they're going to say, listen, who are you to tell me anything? You've been dropping passes. You've been kind of nondescript. Who are you to tell me anything? I do like the fire, but he has to be careful that it doesn't come off hollow. It doesn't fall on deaf ears. It's definitely a fine line, but if he goes out there on Sunday and catches 2 touchdowns, those words will become sincere. Those words will have meaning. If he goes out there and drops 3 passes, what is it going to say to his teammates? Like, you're telling me to do my job when you can't even do yours either.
I got to say, I like it because one thing that jumped out to me on Sunday in that brutal loss against the Chiefs was, where's the leadership? Where are the leaders on this team, and who are the leaders on this team? And it was palpable. It feels like, and obviously the onus for that is on Drew Lock on the offensive side. But, when Philip Lindsay went down with the concussion, there really was kind of a lack of fire, a lack of leadership. And I like seeing Jeudy kind of get a little fired up. Now, I'm with you that it's one thing to kind of assert yourself in a huddle like that. And as Drew said, I want to read something else he said here, that it's not something you typically hear, and it's not his responsibility to tighten the huddle. That's on Drew. That's on the O-line. But he liked it. I dig that so long as he comes to play. And, Zack, the worst thing about Jeudy up to this point is you brought up the one drop in New England that was a touchdown, and not an easy catch to make, but a catch that if you're a first-round pick and a highly paid pro athlete and an NFL wide receiver, that's a play you should make. The drops that Jeudy has had this year, without exception, have all been key drops, meaning that they either come on third down or in the red zone, and that's what's been the worst thing is, players play, ballers ball, and when the chips have been down, Jeudy hasn't really risen to the occasion. But I like that he's pushing himself because maybe, Zack, the phenomenon could take place where by asserting himself and trying to take a little more ownership and whatnot, that it actually elevates his game a little bit in week 8.
Yeah, fake it till you make it. And I really wasn't referencing one Jeudy dropper in particular. It's an ongoing theme this season where the mental grasp of the NFL is a little underdeveloped for Jerry Jeudy at this point, more so than we thought it would be. Someone compared to Deshaun Hamilton, though, I wonder how he receives that, or Tim Patrick, how he receives that. Veteran players who have more skin in the game than Jerry Jeudy. Even Noah Fant, who's admitting that, listen, I understand why the defense is mad at us. I understand the offense hasn't come to play. You want that spark. I understand both sides here. You want that spark from some player. Usually, though, it's on a rookie who's struggling himself, though. Usually it's the quarterback or the coach or someone in that huddle, Dalton Reisner. I mean, someone in that huddle who needs to be the mouthpiece of the offense. And if it's not Philip Lindsay, Cortland Sutton's not there, they have a problem. If Jerry Jeudy is the only guy bringing that fire.
Yeah, it needs to be Drew Lock. Here's something else Lock said, elaborating on the Jerry Jeudy thing. And the whole topic got opened up by Lock being asked about the miscommunication with Jerry Jeudy on that one deep shot that he was nowhere close to. There was obviously something going on there. And he was talking about that. And then it just occurred to him, this story, this anecdote about tightening up the huddle, which he said again, quote, "I thought that was awesome. We talked about it after the game." So dating it back to Sunday. That I look back on my last games as a rookie, and I hated the fact that I wasn't as vocal as I could have been and used the rookie card to let the vets talk as an excuse. I told him, talking about Jeudy, I don't want you to feel that, especially right now as we're kind of in a hole. Guys will look to you. Guys will look to me, regardless of how old we are. And we have to keep that vocal point going, close quote. And that's my main two takeaways out of this, Zach. The reason I wanted to talk about it tonight is, I like seeing Jerry Jeudy kind of taking a little ownership here on the leadership side. But more than anything, someone has to step up. All right. And look, a lot of their veteran studs, right? The guys that you would traditionally look to in that locker room, the Von Millers, multiple Pro Bowls, the Jarrell Casey's, multiple Pro Bowls. You mentioned Cortland Sutton, Pro Bowler. They're done for the year. They're not there. So these young guys have to step up, but now convert it to the field.
How about the $8 million a year running back, though? I mean, he's been around the NFL long enough. He is one of the most senior-most players on this offense. Where is he? He came out today and for the first time addressed his DUI, and he basically said, I'm only saying this so it doesn't seem like I'm ignoring it. I mean, Melvin Gordon's leadership or that lack thereof constantly shows out on the field, in the locker room. You want to have him step up here. If Philip Lindsay can do it, and being so young, Melvin Gordon can do it as well. It's for someone coming, defending Drew Lock, it's a little nerve-wracking that he's not taking hold of that mantle, that he's not stepping in there and pissing some teammates off. He can't be everyone's friend. And I hope he learned that from John Elway and Peyton Manning. You're never going to win everyone over in any facet of life. If you have 10 other people in that huddle, not every single person is going to love you. You got to have to be that a-hole, that D-bag, that Aaron Rodgers type that we thought we were getting in him. So as much as I like Locke, I agree here with you, Chad. He needs to be the one far and away as the quarterback to set the tone day in and day out.
We need to see more on that side of things from Locke. It's good to hear about the swagger. It's good to hear about the confidence and the enthusiasm and all that. But at the same time, it has to matriculate to the leadership side. And it just hasn't really seemed to be there the last couple of weeks. But guys, we have so much more to get to tonight. A lot of different comments, a lot of different storylines coming out of Dove Valley over the last couple of days surrounding this offense, surrounding this beleaguered quarterback, and really how his teammates have responded to the hole that they find themselves in with regard to Drew Lock. We're going to get to all that and your super chats and your questions and your comments here in just a second. But first, we got to get to a few matters of business.
Yeah, guys, tonight's live stream podcast is brought to you by sportsbetting.com. Broncos country, listen up. Gambling is now legal in the state of Colorado, and here's what makes sportsbetting.com a no-brainer for sports fans. First of all, sharp odds and low juice. They have in-house bookmakers. They're not a third-party provider of odds. You get reduced juice and the best prices. Also, hassle-free bonuses. Only a one-time rollover, guys. One-time rollover. That means the bonus money is yours after you bet it one time, whereas other sites range from 5 to 30 times. Also, 24/7 live customer support. You are always getting a real person in the U.S., never a robot, a real live human being. But here's the kicker. At sportsbetting.com, you can get a 100% risk-free week of sports betting up to $1,000. Not just one bet, but all of your bets. Play for a week, and if your losses exceed your winnings at the end of the week, sportsbetting.com will cover 100% of the difference up to $1,000 with a one-time rollover. So head on over to sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle. That's sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle and capitalize on a risk-free week of sports betting up to $1,000.
Guys, a couple other quick things here, and then we'll jump right back into the topics for tonight. Make sure you're following the podcast on Twitter at HuddleUpPod. While you're at it, follow the main account, at Mile High Huddle. If you have those two accounts followed, you're not going to miss anything as it relates to podcast programming, giveaways, announcements, or breaking Broncos news and analysis. Also, gang, gentle reminder to head on over to huddleuppod.com to the merch store. And get your swag on. Get yourself an MHH trucker hat. Get a Football Priest t-shirt or hat. Get a face mask, hoodie, mug, t-shirts. We got a little bit of everything for everybody. And it's another way that you can support what we're doing here at MHH. And if you're not in a position to patronize the merch store, all of you can do these three things, whether you're with us live in the stream or listening after the fact. You hear us harp on it, episode in, episode out, for a reason. These are simple, organic things that the supporters of MHH and the Huddle Up podcast can do to help keep us healthy, to help not only keep us healthy, help us keep growing. Subscribe first and foremost, like this video, crucial, and share it out there. That's the litmus test that Zach and I really measure how well we're doing. If you think Zach and I are doing a good job for you here, share this out. Help us continue to grow, and we are growing exponentially across all of our platforms and reach new like-minded Broncos fans just like you. And then one last thing, we got to give a shout out to our Facebook supporters, and those ranks continue to swell. Shout out to all the new supporters that have come on over the last few days. We really appreciate you. If you're on Facebook and you're one of our Facebook community members, you'd like to become an official supporter, just go to the Facebook page, MHH's Facebook page, facebook.com/milehighhuddle. You'll see the big blue button that says become a supporter. Click that. You're in. We have some really fun and exciting plans for our Facebook supporters coming down the pike in the very, very near future. But it's just another way you can support us, and a mile high salute to those who already have. We really do appreciate you guys.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Listen up, Broncos country. Coors Hard Seltzer is not your average seltzer. Rooted in Coors' long history of sustainability, their brand was inspired by a generation that wants to do good in the world, that has a mission to restore America's rivers. Never before has it been so easy to make an impact and make a difference and do good in the world. Coors Hard Seltzer is launching the world's easiest volunteer program. Whatever you're doing, simply by cracking open a can of Coors Hard Seltzer, you're volunteering. Our waterways, guys, they are at risk. 80% of America's rivers are drying up, and through a partnership with Change the Course, Coors Hard Seltzer is helping to protect and restore America's rivers. Each 12-pack of Coors Hard Seltzer restores 500 gallons of fresh water to U.S. rivers. Wrap your brain around that. And the communities that depend on them. It's so important. The results? 1 billion, that's with a B, gang, gallons of water restored to 16 river basins across the U.S., including the Colorado River. And that's just year one. And here's what's great about Coors Hard Seltzer: 4 refreshing flavors, 1 cool cause. Enjoy naturally flavored black cherry, mango, lemon lime, and grapefruit. And the specs are in, gang. Coors Seltzer is 4.5% ABV and only 90 calories.
Chad, I got to say, for last Sunday's slate of NFL games, I picked up a Coors Hard Seltzer and mango. Loved it. This week, I picked up a Coors Hard Seltzer and black cherry. Loved it even more. So, guys, whether you want to support the cause or like the flavors, you won't be disappointed with a Coors Hard Seltzer.
Amen. So join the world's easiest volunteer program by simply drinking Coors Hard Seltzer. You can volunteer to restore America's rivers. You buy Coors Hard Seltzer, you help restore 500 gallons of water into America's rivers. It is that simple. Visit CoorsSeltzer.com to find Coors Seltzer near you. That's CoorsSeltzer.com.
For every 12-pack sold through 8/31/2021, Coors will purchase services from Change the Course to restore 500 gallons of fresh river water. Details at CoorsSeltzer.com. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Fort Worth, Texas.
All right, Zach. Whoa, Levi Hope jumping in off the top rope with a very generous super chat.
Thank you, Levi.
Good to see you, my friend. He's rocking, as you know, his YouTube pick, the Zachary Smouse let them hate t-shirt. And that's apropos right now because, hey, when has it ever been more appropriate when it comes to the topic of Drew Lock to say hashtag let them hate? Appreciate you, Levi. He says, hey, fellas, hope everyone is doing well. Really appreciate that, my friend. Thank you, Levi. Couple other things here real quick as well. We got Steve Baumgartner jumping in with a generous super, and he got in early, Zach. He dropped this super an hour and a half before we even went live. So thank you, Steven.
Thank you, Steven.
I did see, for what it's worth, your last DM. I just haven't had a chance to reply to you yet. Appreciate your support as always, my friend. He says, Drew Lock is my quarterback. Go Broncos, Denver Broncos for life. And, of course, being the loyal Nebraska fan that he is, go Big Red. Hashtag state of being. Hashtag let them hate. Appreciate that, Steve. Really do. A couple other things I want to touch on. I know there's quite a few, and thanks and welcome to all of you guys who are with us here tonight. The guys and gals of Broncos country, the MHH community showing out in force. We appreciate each and every one of you being here with us this evening. Zach, a few other things I wanted to touch on from the topics coming out of Dove Valley over the last couple of days. Firstly, though, I want to dial it back to Tuesday's media availability and some of the things that Bradley Chubb had to say about this young offense. We're still young. We've still got guys that are learning how to be pros and get into the flow of things. We've got so much talent, but like I said, it's just guys learning how to be pros and how all this stuff really works. Everyone on this team is locked in and ready, eyes focused, ears open, ready to follow whoever is ready to lead. Interesting. Let's put a pin in that. That's why I feel like I had to step up. We've got guys like Drew Lock. Drew Lock is one of the greatest kids you'll ever meet. He goes out there with passion, and I know he's going to change it around. I know that those guys on the offensive line are going to continue to block their A's off. I know that the receivers are going to catch those balls that are sometimes 50-50 balls. I know all of that is going to change. I know it for a fact, and I 100% believe it. Now it's just time for us to go out and show it. I know those guys are just as upset as we are because we want to win just as they want to win just as much as I do. So I know 100% that this whole team is going to change this around, and I just want to be that kickstart to get it changed around. Close quote. Zach, your reaction.
First of all, we had some audio issues there. You sounded like you were on auto-tune, Chad. I'm going to start calling you C-Pain from now on. I thought It was me. So, yeah, it was like a little robotic there. Yeah, it's all good now. It evened out. But in terms of that quote, it's a lot what I would expect right now from a team in this position coming off a really tough loss to a division rival. I do like what's emanating from the locker room, even after they went back and forth, the offense versus the defense. There's no split yet. There's no mutiny yet. There's no checking out yet. And I feel like at least Vic Fangio has the team at least believing they can win more games. They can compete this season. No one is giving up. No one is latching onto that Drew Lock performance as his, no doubt about it, his resume definer. He's going to be better than what he showed. The Broncos will win more games this year. And it seems like just on that one quote that one sentence, the Lions going to block their A's off, the quarterbacks, everyone still believes in each other. This team is not as bad as people would believe they are, and coming from inside Dove Valley, you can sense there's still a lot of confidence in their own abilities.
Bronx legend jumping in, longtime listener of the show, bona fide superstar. It's good to see you, Angel. I know you can't make it to as many live streams as you have in times past, but we sure love it when you do make it in, and thank you for the support, my friend.
Thank you.
He says, rocking with Drew Lock. He will bounce back. Hashtag state of being. Really means a lot, my friend. And Zach, one message I want to impart to everybody is, look, everyone's acting like 5 quarters of play, because I'll dial it back to the fourth quarter in New England, that due to 5 quarters of play, the book is written on Drew Lock. It's over. Throw the baby out with the bathwater. The season is completely wrecked. Broncos have no future at quarterback right now. It's over. And I don't understand why a fan base that has been as long-suffering and future-oriented as Broncos country has been, and it's not everybody, so I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, though, has been so short-sighted. I just don't understand it, because you got to have some perspective. And as bad as that performance was against the Chiefs, there's still a lot of football left to be played. And, I mean, most quarterbacks, in fact, all quarterbacks, at some point they have these type of meltdown games, Zach, that are kind of reset moments, right, where they go, wow, it's like it's sometimes, I mean, this is simplifying it a little bit, but it's like a baby learning to walk when they learn that if they fall down, they're going to bonk their head. They push their boundaries. And when they do fall, they learn lessons from that, and it informs them down the road. And it's a similar thing where, Drew Lock's trying to stretch his boundaries a little bit as a young quarterback last week in only his 9th start. He bumped his head a few times. There's a lesson to be learned there. And I think just keeping the focus on Drew, accepting, putting Pat Shurmur to the side for a minute, putting the receivers to the side and the offensive line, just on Drew himself, I think that was a good reminder, reset moment that, hey, man, look, it's great to have the full support of the organization. It was great to have the full support and admiration of the fan base and my locker room too. But I've got that wasn't acceptable. I got to turn the ship around. I got to learn the lessons that are there to be learned and, basically start over. It's a gut check moment for both Drew Lock and now I'll include Pat Shurmur, because Pat Shurmur has done him no favors.
I can think of different analogies or different sayings for the Broncos, the sect of Broncos country that's just not satisfied with letting a young quarterback grow after years of wanting a young quarterback. I'm reminded by one of my favorite sayings of my favorite show of all time. That sect of Broncos country is like the old woman with a Virginia ham underneath her arm crying the blues because she has no bread. You have to be happy with what you have right now. He's a still developing young quarterback with less than 10 starts under his belt. He is going to have those games. I don't know about you guys out there knocking Lock. Were you not expecting to see those awful blow-up type games from Lock in a negative way? I know I was, and I predicted a playoff season and, close to 4,000 yards for him. This is the type of quarterback that he is. It was a tough environment, not making excuses, a tough situation, but just give him at least one more game to let him make up for those faults. Let him come out against the Chargers and prove that A, he is the Broncos man for the job, and B, no Broncos fan should want Justin Herbert because they should be happy with the quarterback they have right now, right this second.
Tom El Greco jumping in. Bona fide superstar now, north of the 49th parallel up there in Canada. Really appreciate you, my friend. He says, sorry, I predicted KC to blow out our Broncos, but they'll win this week. Thanks, guys. All right, Nostra Tom jumping in with the crystal ball prediction here. Thank you, my friend. And for what it's worth, I picked the Broncos as well. I was riding the wave. Gary jumping in. Appreciate you with the comment, being with us tonight. He says, yeah, we got this. I predicted a win this week as well. Zach, we're not quite there yet in terms of laying out our predictions for Sunday. We'll get to that maybe in tomorrow's podcast. Of course, the Mile High Roundtable will come out on Friday, but we're kind of still marinating on that. You might have already formed your opinion on it. I know I haven't quite yet, but let's put a pin in that topic just for a second.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Based Gase with the with the profile pic that just makes you feel like you're on meth or something. Appreciate you, Doc. He says the Skangs offense was QB friendly because it offered up so many half-field reads with less in the pocket demands than Shurmur. We've got to dumb it down. You know what's ironic, and that's a good point, Based Case. Thank you for the super as well, my friend. It's a fair point, Zach, to make that, one of the things that we heard a lot when the Broncos opted to fire Skangs and hire Pat Shurmur, talking to people around the league, listening to what other quarterbacks who played for Pat had to say, was that his scheme, if you boil it down, it was very quarterback friendly. I do think that in many ways his scheme is quarterback friendly if a quarterback is at a certain point in his development, and I just don't think Drew Lock and Pat Shurmur have had enough time together. I think Shurmur, and this isn't a knock on Lock, this is just acknowledging his relative youth and inexperience in the NFL, Zach. I think Shurmur put a lot more faith, so to speak, trust, expectations that Lock was a little bit further down the developmental learning curve than he actually was.
I could see
that. Taking some cues here from the Skangs playbook in terms of paring it down, more two tight end sets, half-field reads, running some slants, running some outs, running some underneath, some drags, like utilize all the different levels of the field. It's not just going for broke every time. But nevertheless, it's ironic that he was viewed as and talked about as having a very quarterback-friendly offense. It sure hasn't been friendly to Drew up to this point.
It hasn't. And, it's funny. I'm not saying I started a movement, but no one was mentioning Scangarello's name before the last couple of weeks. Everyone was still on the Shurmur bandwagon. And now you're seeing the play calls and the way he's being mishandled, I think, Drew Lock. And Chad, I know you're more of a Shurmur fan than I am, and I agree with you that he needs at least more time on task with Drew Lock. They have to have more than a few games together. It takes years and years to build chemistry and connection. But again, this is my card I keep pulling. What explains or justifies a flea flicker in the snow? What explains or justifies a 4th and 1 shuffle? What explains or justifies throwing on 3rd and 4th and short? That's Pat Shurmur's play calling. It's the situational play calling. So again, you might think he's the best man for the job, better than Scangarello because of his resume, and you might be right. He might be a quarterback guru, but what have we seen to this point that would show that? What proof do we have that Shurmur made an improvement on Lock that Scangarello didn't already accomplish? I just feel like Shurmur, any credit he's getting was the foundation that Rich laid behind, and Rich got the blame for it, and no credit whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, it's hard to blame. And by the way, Clip Stormborn, as I mentioned to you today on Facebook, I've been thinking about you with what's going on in your fair city of Philadelphia and some of the unrest going on there. So good to hear from you. Thanks for being in the stream. Appreciate the support. He says, happy hump day, priest. Peace and love from Philly. A lot going down in the city of brotherly love over the last few days. So stay safe, my friend. The irony with I shouldn't say irony. The thing I think fans need to keep in mind as you start going, grass is greener, woulda, shoulda, coulda with regard to the coordinator change is that nobody on God's green earth could have predicted the pandemic, right? And the way that affected things. We don't know how much that cost Drew Lock and Pat Shurmur with regard to getting on the same page. I think it had an effect. And, we can point to, for example, say Justin Herbert. Look how good he's played the last few weeks. And obviously he had the same scheme limitations. He's a rookie. This is all new to him as well. He seems to be hitting the ground running. And there's absolute truth to that. But my point is to the idea of moving on from Skangs to Shurmur and saying, oh, look, you're upsetting the apple cart for Drew Lock. You're not giving him coaching and systematic continuity. The Broncos thought they were going to have a regular traditional offseason. They couldn't have predicted what was going to unfold. And then I'm going to serve this over to you. Bison jumping in. Thanks, my friend. He says, good evening, fellas. Excited to watch Lock rebound. But what's your take to, is it revisionist history?
Chad, I agree with what you're saying. And to be fair and to be totally objective, again, you need a full season and preferably back-to-back seasons with Lock in the same system. But in terms of the offseason, the pandemic, and everything being crazy, what is the excuse for Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray in Arizona? That offense is balling. What's the excuse for Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland, who has Baker Mayfield in that running game playing a lot better? It really doesn't matter about any situation or circumstance. It matters about coaching. And when you have the coaching, everything else falls into place. I believe Stefanski and Cliff Kingsbury are much better coaches than Pat Shurmur. They're much better quarterback developers than Pat Shurmur. I say that on one hand, while on the other hand, acknowledging you need to have more time with them to see what they're really about. My whole thing is, though, based on what I've seen through a handful of games and less with Drew Lock, I just don't see any creativity. I see predictability. I see a regression with Lock under Shurmur, whereas we saw progression with Lock under Scangarello.
Yeah, and up to this point, I mean, look, I think in the Tennessee game, it was a performance from Drew that reminded me very much of his Week 16 and Week 17 performances last year against Detroit and the Raiders, respectively, in terms of not trying to play hero ball and pushing the envelope. But that Patriots game, obviously, I don't know if it was from spending the month, hurt with the shoulder and, you miss what you can, just storm back onto the scene. I mean, he was really aggressive in that game. And for three of the four quarters, he was dropping dimes and he was very accurate with those vertical shots. His receivers did him no favors. But then you get into the Kansas City game and it just all fell apart. And I want to see, nothing too flashy, like play within the scheme. Don't put more on yourself than is necessary. It's okay to want to maintain that aggressive mindset and have your eye on the deep shot when the opportunity arises and when the defense gives you the looks and whatnot, but you got to play within the scheme, and his coaches can do a lot more from a coaching perspective to help him do that.
Yeah, and it'd be like again, mentioning Cliff Kingsbury, it'd be like making Kyler Murray a pocket passer or making Lamar Jackson in Baltimore a pocket passer. They have to take advantage of Locke's arm, but also be smart and also think of his confidence, Chad. Him going 0 for 5 is a lot more damaging than, when he goes 3 for 4 for 30 yards, 25 yards, when he throws a couple underneath passes, just to get him in a rhythm. Shermer has done nothing of that. And I don't know whether that's script or game planning or just, again, situational coaching, but they're failing him in his development, not just in the stat sheet, but also his confidence and the mental factor as well.
Yeah, and just going away, and we're going to grab Alex next, but just having this bizarre penchant to go away from the things that are working. Like all of a sudden you're running the ball, you're moving the ball, not only on the ground with 2 tight end sets, that's working for you, but you're hitting a few things in the play action underneath. And then all of a sudden you go empty on 2nd and 10, like just weird, bizarre. It's like, look, you stick to your hits, man.
How about ignoring Noah Fant for a half of a ball game after he led the first half in receiving? Again, it's coaching.
That's a good point, and I want to bring up Noah Fant had something really interesting to say on Tuesday. We're going to get to that, but first let's grab Alex. Appreciate the super chat from Alex Salazar here, and that's a name, Zach, we don't recognize on super chat, so welcome.
Welcome, yes.
And thank you, my friend. Means a lot. He says, what's up, guys? Y'all got a new fan here. Great podcast. Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
If Locke really locks down, Zach, we can criticize, and there was plenty of material there in week 7 to criticize Drew Lock. But fans really got to keep it within the scope of the NFL season's a long grind. There's a lot of row left to hoe. And in that row, there's a lot of opportunity for Drew Lock to grow and turn the ship around.
They also have to keep in mind, again, it's his 9th career start. It's his only his 2nd game coming back from injury. And is it fair to say, Chad, the Chiefs' defense is better than New England's? So that was a tougher matchup for him. I mean, yeah, he should have had a big game against New England. They got the win, though. He didn't play well against Kansas City, but that defense is also kind of underrated as well. Bad matchup, bad game. Those stinkers are going to happen. It's any young quarterback in the NFL has them. Comparing him, like Chad always says, to Patrick Mahomes, who is the unicorn, the once in an eternity quarterback, is not fair to Drew Lock. He's on a much more normal curve than a lot of people would happen to think because every young quarterback goes through these struggles, every single one.
Hey, real quick, guys, Zach's mentioned it. I'm hearing it from John, and I'm sure it's coming through the chat. If I have another breakup part with my internet, I don't know what's going on because I'm looking at it now and everything shows good on my side. But if I have another breakup, I'm just going to X out and come on back. Zach can hold it down till I come back in, and maybe it's just my laptop needs a reset or something like that. But
the offense has been inconsistent all year. It's, again, I hate to say shoddy coaching, but injuries, new players, new personnel, new quarterbacks. It's been a literal carousel going round and round and round. And the biggest thing you want with a young quarterback is consistency and, as you say, Chad, time on task. And the Broncos haven't been able to get that yet. And they faced, again, a murderer's row of opponents through their first 7 games. When the Jets were the only beatable team, every other team, though, has been a playoff caliber opponent. That's not an easy position for a young quarterback to be in, considering every other circumstance that I just named.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Okay, guys, real quick. Zach's going to carry this forward for a few minutes while I bounce out, reset, come back in. Hopefully that's all it is because I'm showing good speed test on my side and good connection. But I'll be back. Zach's got you. See you in just a few minutes.
All right. Impromptu solo pod time. All right, John, let's throw up the next question here. We'll knock some of these out before Chad gets back. Terry jumping in. Nice to see you, Terry. Thank you so much for your donation. He goes, #state of being, #let him hate, of course. #s'more days, #MHHUN. Terry, we appreciate you as always. Thank you so much for representing. And hope you like the show tonight. What else we got, John? Keep giving these to me. I'm scrolling through the comments. Kevin Peterson jumping in. Big KP, $5 donation. Thank you, Kevin, so much. He goes, if you call yourself a Bronco fan, stand with your team no matter what. Yeah, and I know one of the most overused cliches is root for the name on the front of the jersey, not the back of the jersey, but in this case, it's true. Everyone was a Drew Lock fan coming into the season. Everyone thought it was going to be, a huge year, if not the year for Drew Lock. And because he had one stinker against the reigning world champs, everyone's jumping off that bandwagon. Everyone's jumping off the ship. Well, guess what? People who jump off the ship end up lost at sea. And that's exactly where those people are going to remain. Lost at sea, rudderless, looking for a lifeboat, looking for a raft. And when you come across them, Broncos country, do not throw them one. They are knee-jerk, impulsive. They are not real fans. They're rooting for the player, in this case, Brett Rippon or Blake Bortles or Trevor Lawrence or anyone else over Drew Lock. They should be rooting for the Broncos and Lock to do well. That's the sign, and I hate to say it because it's taboo, challenging what a real fan is, but any real fan, in my opinion, is rooting for the entire team, and that's including number 3. Let's see. What else? Ronnie, nice to see you, Ronnie, from the old 24/7 Facebook Live days. Thanks for hopping in here. He says, will Justin Simmons be retained? You know, guys, that's the million-dollar question for the Broncos going into the offseason. A lot of players up in the air. He hasn't played. I'm sure the Broncos want to keep him around, and it's beneficial for them financially. Him not playing well, it lowers his cost, Chad. But based on what he was asking for and based on the way he's playing this year, it seems like he's taking his foot off the gas pedal emotionally because he didn't get his contract. He doesn't seem to be playing with the same fire or the same want to. It seemed like that contract squabble really dejected him. And if that's the case, I don't want him around for $15 million a year. I still bring him back maybe for 10 or 11 below market value, but unless his play picks up, he is never going to get even close what he was asking for. He is not the best safety in the NFL, at least this season. That's a definite.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. And hopefully it's smooth sailing. This year for Justin, Zach, reminds me very much so of the 2018 version of Justin, where he'd have a really good game and flash, and then 2 really bad games or average games, then flash and back and forth, top dollar, top of the market money too. So hopefully he can turn that around here in the very, very near future. And but if you're the Denver Broncos at this stage and you got a couple of guys that are going to be demanding top of the market money, comes down to Garrett Bowles and Justin Simmons in a contract year. Right now, I'm putting my money on Garrett Bowles just based on he's been an elite tackle so far this year.
Not only a tackle, he's a left tackle. He's a potential franchise blindside protector. You take those guys any day. Even Garrett Bowles, it's crazy to say, Chad, on October 28th, I'd rather take Garrett Bowles long-term over Justin Simmons, but you take a franchise long-term foundational left tackle over a safety any day of the week, any day.
All right, so we have had an extremely active super chat, and while we grab Cody here and answer Cody and address Cody's topic, I'm going to pull a few from the YouTube side and do it the old-fashioned way, paste them in, and we'll get those that the chat has jumped on the super chat. So Cody Potter jumping in. Good to see you, Cody.
Thank you, Cody.
Says, I heard Fangio say earlier today that Sly and Shelby Harris, so Sylvester Williams, for those of you who missed it, he was cut last week, re-signed at the nose tackle. How come no McTelvin Ajim?
It's not that I'm necessarily high on Ajim as a nose tackle. I just think it's time for him to earn his draft status here. It's time for him to make some plays and kind of earn his place and keep on the Broncos defensive line, which even with the injuries, it's still fairly deep. You have Deshaun Williams getting another look. Sylvester Williams played really well. Whenever you have Bill Kolar, this is the one position on the Broncos I am never worried about. No matter injuries, ineffectiveness, poor play, the opponent, as long as Bill Kolar is there, he will always mold every defensive lineman into a very capable player. In terms of nose tackle, I think Sly will start, but Ajim, he was a draft pick. A lot of other young guys are contributing. I'm just saying he needs to put his big boy pants on and make some plays.
I'm gonna keep my, just for the next little stretch here, I don't know what's going on, but I'm gonna keep my remarks relatively brief and serve things over to you, Zach, just until things stabilize. But Rich Stimson jumping in. Appreciate the super. He says, hey, guys, new to the stream, born and raised in Breck. Love this channel. You two are so positive, and it's much needed. Need to be patient with luck.
Yes, thank you, Ridge, and also welcome to the podcast. And it's true. I mean, it's Chad. We're getting these first-time viewers and fans who are coming in and saying what we've been preaching for days now. It's patience. It's let him get over this loss. Let him process this loss. You saw last year when he lost to Kansas City, he came back and won his last 2 games. Let him prove himself. Give him one more game to shake this monkey off his back. I promise he will do it.
We got a bona fide superstar jumping in. Thank you, Kenneth. Always in every single stream, showing love and bringing up the good questions and topics. He says, move on from Shermer and let Mike Shula call plays. Zach, if it gets much worse, like if you get a few more games in the next month, similar to the Chiefs game, that's a possibility because Mike Shula is a very accomplished play caller and offensive coordinator.
Here's what I'm doing. As soon as or if the Broncos are eliminated mathematically from postseason contention, I am firing Pat Shurmur, or I'm at least demoting him and giving Mike Shula the chance. Because again, Chad, barring the playoffs, what is the most important aspect of this entire season? Arguably more important than the playoffs. That is finding out whether Drew Lock is the guy and pairing him with the best play caller. If you don't want to get rid of Shurmur outright, at least give Shula a shot. He has the experience at this level, and based on what we've seen, and if it gets to that point, it can't be much worse. What do you have to lose? What do you really have to lose? And you consider you have everything to gain with a better play caller to suit your young quarterback.
But it's a contingency the Broncos do have. I mean, it's something that they can turn to, but you only turn to Mike Shula as a play caller if you fire Sherman. I know you're calling for that right now, or at least you're mentioning it as a possibility, but in my opinion, way too early to be talking about firing Shermer. Give him a few games with the same quarterback under center, and then, give him the rest of the season, frankly, but at least the next 4 games with the same quarterback under center, then make a decision. KP, longtime listener, bona fide super stud. Now that amazing bookshelf, hashtag family love, hashtag bustin' chops.
Yeah, we haven't gotten a bookshelf comment for a while, so good to see you, KP. Thank you for tuning in, keeping your sharp eye on me as always.
The Broncos wizard in the house, Mundungus Creevy. Good to see you, my friend, as always. Long time, well, I shouldn't say long time. Mundungus joined us somewhere in the depths of what was a very touch-and-go pandemic summer, and he just immediately jumped in with the as a superstar. So thank you, my friend. Zach, we've explained our relative skepticism about PFF's arbitrary grades at times, but the grades in this case from PFF match the tape. Bowles has been great.
Yes, it matches the tape, and it also matches my eyeballs. And my eyeballs and my brain tell me Garrett Bowles is looking like a legit left tackle. Whether he's the best left tackle in the NFL, I'll defer to the experts and the stats and the analytics to prove that. But certainly Garrett Bowles has defied my expectations, most of Broncos country expectations. And this is why I say, if Denver was smart, they think about entering negotiation talks with him now, contract talks now, and not later.
Duke Boynton. Talk about a superstar. And Duke, my thoughts and our prayers have been with you the last couple of days. And I don't want to share any of your personal laundry, but I know you've been going through something. So much love to you, my friend, and to your family. He says, all things considered, Locke will figure this out. But dang, having a patchwork defensive group hold Mahomes to 1 TD and 200 yards is impressive. And Zach, adding to that, 0 for 8 on third down. I never would have guessed a Broncos defense, regardless of who was on the field, regardless of who was coaching it, would hold Mahomes 0 for 8 on third down.
And that's exactly why Bradley Chubb was mad. That's exactly why Shelby Harris was mad. It'd be like you picture whoever's listening, doing a group project for everyone, and everyone gets the credit, and it's every single week, and they don't pull their own weight. That's exactly what it is with the Broncos offense and the Broncos defense. The defense played more than well enough to win that game. They played amazingly for the most part, and the offense, goose egg, nothing. They just went like this. You guys do it. You guys take care of it. That's been the situation in the case for at least 4 seasons now. That's why the anger is coming out. But in terms of the defense, the way Fangio, the game plan, the way he called that game, I give him all the credit in the world. Masterful performance.
Aaron Lynch, longtime listener of the show, bona fide superstar. Appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you.
He says, if we can just finish the season with more answers than questions, well, that would just be all right. Yeah, I mean, worst case scenario, if you at least get a beat on Drew Lock, even if he doesn't end up, if that answer is he's not our guy, we can't count on him long term, we got to go back to the draft. If that's your answer, odds are the season plays out about the way it started, through these first 6 games. That puts you in play for a top quarterback in the first round in the coming draft. I just don't think it's going to come to that. I do think you're going to see some improvement, and it might not happen overnight. And we'll get more into the Chargers game here tonight and a lot more tomorrow night. But I think you're going to see him step forward. And even if the Broncos lose to the Chargers, I think you're going to see Drew Lock ameliorate some of the concerns in Broncos country.
There's 2 questions the Broncos have to answer by year's end, and that is Locke the guy, number 1, and is his coaching staff, number 2, the staff that can get the most out of Drew Lock? Is Pat Shurmur the guy? Is Mike Shula the guy as the quarterback's coach? Is this coaching staff the staff of the future? So it's hand in hand as well. It's those 2 questions and literally everything else that has to be answered. So they have to find out quarterback and coaching staff by January.
Let's grab Z-Dub in the house. Good to see you. Smouse in the house. How can I mention it without saying that? Good to see you, my friend. Talk about a bona fide superstar and just an MHH Mount Rushmore member here. We love you, buddy. He says, I wish Broncos country would realize that our offense is young, and plus it's only Locke's 3.2 game with Shermer, hashtag let him hate. Week 1, almost a win. Shermer kind of let him down in the 4-minute offense. Week 2, he gets hurt. And 8-9 plays in, whatever that was. Week 6, you beat the Patriots on the road. Week 7, he melts down. So as Zach says, Zachary, look, you got to temper not expectations. I'm not saying like completely abandon any hope that, like, dating back to what Colin Cowherd said during the offseason, that Drew Lock's my pop guy for 2020. Like, I'm not even saying abandon that. That might sound pretty far-fetched at this stage after what you saw against the Chiefs in the snow. But Drew Lock is a very talented quarterback, and he just needs his coaches to come through for him and really help give him some perspective in these games, that he doesn't have to be the hero, snap in and snap out.
And not only is he a young quarterback, but let's keep in mind his supporting cast, the changes there. The entire right side of his O-line is new. A new right tackle, a new right guard, and a new center. A new tight end in Alberto and Nick Van Ent. A new receivers in Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler. A new running back in Melvin Gordon. These things take time to come together. I mentioned Kyler Murray. I saw a comment that said he looked better last year. He had more games and experience than Drew Lock. He played 16 games. It takes time for a young quarterback who comes out of college unrefined, especially as unrefined as Drew Lock. You throw in all those personnel changes, the coaching changes, the lack of an offseason. What are you guys expecting based on one bad loss? Give him some time. It's not that difficult.
As Sean says on Facebook, and thank you, Sean, for being with us here. He says, I like Lock, but he's too cocky to have done anything. In other words, like, he hasn't done enough to be as cocky as he is. But
how is he cocky?
You, Sean, what's the alternative? Do you want him to be Trevor Siemian? Do you want him to be Paxton Lynch, the goofball, doing the goofy
the
stuff? That's what the word that escaped me. The dabbing. I mean, what do you want? I would rather the fake it till you make it type. I'm the quarterback. I'm the man. I'm rapping Jeezy on the sideline. I'm rallying my dude. We'll talk more about his troops rallying around him here, but what would you prefer as the alternative? That's my question for you, Sean.
You want a passive beta quarterback, then by all means, you can root for that guy. But how is he cocky? I know there's confidence and cockiness, but every time he's messed up, like last week, Locke has come out and said, I have to be better. I am the guy. It starts with me. That's not a cocky person. He's confident in his abilities. He loves having fun out there, but I would call him cocky if he was, Chad. I have not seen that from him in his second season now.
Mike Evans, appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you, Mike.
He says, do you think Bradley Chubb has become the vocal leader for the defense? Zach, I definitely think he's become one of them. If I had to say who are the leaders of the Broncos defense, vocal leaders, I would say Chubb's up there now, and I would mention Shelby Harris.
Yes.
Maybe not as vocal, but Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson. That would be the four guys, 2 up front, 2 on the back end. You probably need either a Josie Jewell or an Alexander Johnson to kind of step into a leadership role, so you got all 3 levels. But, yeah, I would definitely say he's become – a vocal leader. Is he the vocal leader for the defense? Too soon to say, in my opinion.
Right, I agree 100%. There was the vocal leader, the no doubt about it guy, that was Derek Wolfe for years. I mean, he ran that defense from a verbal standpoint. And nowadays, Bradley Chubb, now that he's playing better, he's feeling himself. He is a leader. Shelby Harris is a leader as well. The best defenders on that team, the best players, are the ones that are speaking out loudest. What does that say?
Appreciate you, my friend. And yeah, I need your advice, my friend. I need your direction. He says, Chad, I'm flying up. You and I are heading to the nearest electronics store to get your Wi-Fi hooked up. Yeah, I don't know, dude. It's really bizarre because, as you guys know, those of you who've been with us for a while, you know that over the summer I had a little Wi-Fi issue and got it upgraded. And I thought I had everything cool, but now we're having a problem here. It's been a minute, knock on wood, but Zeus, I do need to quit putting it off. You and I do need to hook up. Even if you don't fly up here, we need to get on the horn and you need to walk me through some stuff here. Jay Ritchie jumping in. Good to see you, Jay. Hope the message is doing all right as well, my friend. He says, Zach, love you guys, but you need to stop with the coaching. 4 games coaches had with Drew. Kyler looked bad his first 4 games. Baker benched a week ago. Stop with coaching. It's time for Drew to perform. So I think, Zach, there's a fine line in terms of taking an absolute take either way. It's not only Drew. It's not only coaching. I think really the biggest message here is everyone needs to step up, and everyone needs to recognize, one thing that people need to keep in mind is one of the utilities of the traditional bye week for teams is they self-scout. All right. They look at what's working for themselves. They look at, hey, if we were attacking ourselves as an opponent, how would we attack us? That helps them kind of find the weaknesses and whatnot. The Broncos lost that this time around. And I don't know, I don't point that as an excuse, but it adds to the challenge that the coaches have to kind of figure out how to dial this in and make the most of Drew Lock and the talent around him.
First of all, I've said unequivocally now about 5 times, he was bad in that game, Lock. It was his responsibility, but it doesn't have to be one or the other. He was bad. The play calling was bad. You mentioned, though, Baker. You mentioned Cliff Kingsbury. To piggyback off my points, what are their records? What's Cleveland's record right now? What's Arizona's record right now? Coaching is always a difference. It always comes down to that. And when you have proper coaching, you can hide some of these deficiencies. I just don't understand how Locke is getting all of the blame for footwork and technique and mechanics and the way he's on the field. Why doesn't that blame extend to his coaching staff? Why doesn't that blame extend to the guy who's the guru and the quarterback's coach? Why are they exonerated and Locke gets 100% of the blame? It's 50-50. It's not 100-0.
All right, let me see here. I want to catch up, and I agree. There's no absolutes in life. There's football. It's even more so. There's always a what was that line you used the other day, Zach, about the truth's in the middle? There's 2 sides of the story, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. There's 2 sides to the issue, and usually the truth is somewhere in the middle. Chris McKay says, "What's up, guys? Let's keep the options open at quarterback, no matter what happens. There's no reason to keep the next Stafford over the next Mahomes." Your thoughts?
Who is the next Stafford? Who's the next Mahomes? I assume you mean Drew Lock compared to another quarterback. But you can win with Matt Stafford. You put Matt Stafford on this team with a healthy Broncos supporting cast and decent coaching, they will win 10 games with this defense. We always said, you and I, Chad, Drew Lock, we would love him to be a Hall of Famer, a Pro Bowler, an All-Pro. He doesn't have to be. We've said this for years with every quarterback that's come across the Broncos, from Joe Flacco to Drew Lock. They don't have to be all-stars. They just have to be good enough. They have to be above average, and this team can go places.
Dale jumping in, D-Dub, Horse of War. You see that YouTube profile pic that also exemplifies his Twitter handle. Good to see you, my friend, in paradise, in fact, in Hawaii, across the Pacific. Thank you for your support. Talk about a superstar, super stud, and an MHH Mount Rushmore member. Appreciate you, Dale. He says, I don't blame Locke at this point. That's not saying he doesn't have work to do. I wondered last week if Shermer was smart enough to create mismatches with Alberto and Fant, all of our talent. He answered that question. No excuse. Zach, before we move on here, first of all, I guess actually I'll get it on the other side of your reply here to what he's saying of Shermer being smart enough to create mismatches with the tight ends. There were 17 targets to tight ends last week, but it never really felt, Zach, like it was being utilized as a means with which to exploit what the defense was doing.
How I interpreted exactly, how I saw it was he was overcompensating for the flack that he got the first couple of weeks when he went away from Noah Fant, went away from the tight end. So he heard that and said, okay, I'll pepper these tight ends with targets now. This is what the thing is with Pat Shermer. Do you think after so many years as a coordinator and twice a head coach in this business, he'd be better situationally? I don't think he's the man to develop Drew Lock. I don't think he's the best play caller for Lock's skill set. Having 2 tight ends on the field, we talked about this a few days ago. We shouldn't laud him for that. We shouldn't praise Pat Shermer, who's been around forever, for having 2 explosive pass-catching tight ends on the field together. That's peewee. That's basic, fundamental football. So I'm not giving him credit for that. I want to scheme KJ Hamler open. I want to scheme Jerry Jeudy open. I want to scheme and get the ball in Philip Lindsay's hands more. Once he does that, then I'll give him credit. But having 2 tight ends when those are high investments and high-round draft picks, I'm not giving him praise for that.
Dank Buds and Black Metal jumping in. Appreciate you, my friend. Phenomenal YouTube handle, by the way. Hey, fellas, seems like in these interviews with Locke and others, they finally may have some fire in their eyes and ready to come out and go for the throat. Zach, I do think that there is an element, listening to the tonality of the players so far this week of, they hear the criticism. Drew Lock definitely heard it. He was a little bit testy today, and I can talk more about that here in a few minutes, but I do think that they were embarrassed by that performance, and they know they're better and can be better. It's going to be really curious to see how they respond against the Chargers.
They also know that they're facing a team with a young quarterback who a lot of fans and media are comparing to their own. And they want to prove they have the better quarterback. The Broncos front office wants to prove they have the better team and the better roster. I do like, we talked about this at the top of the show tonight, I like how they're testy. I like how they're fired up. They haven't checked out. They're not feeling sorry for themselves. They're not having their tail between their legs. They want to prove they are better than their record indicates. They want to prove they're better than the final score indicated last week. And I believe they are. Chad believes they are. And I think they will show that this Sunday.
Muhammad jumping in. Good to see you, my friend, and loved the tag on Twitter. Hey, let us know when you get your swag. Send us a selfie. We'll put that up on MHH Instagram and vault you and shout you out. So appreciate your support, my dog. He says, I think we have to be reasonable about our expectations. Drew needs more time, and he will turn around. Again, this is what we want to hear. It's not that you don't criticize Drew. It's not that he didn't open himself up to criticism. It's that you got to have perspective. You got to view it within the proper scope. Was there cause for concern? Yes. Was there cause for alarm? Yeah, as we talked about twice earlier this week, too much was he showing a regression back to some of the old ways at Mizzou, some of the bad habits that he had as a college quarterback. That's alarming and it's concerning, but you're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Listen to what the players are saying today. Listen, and there's a couple of comments still I'm going to grab, but they have the right perspective because they know that the NFL, the careers are not defined by one game. Let me just put it that way.
And I'll even take the hedging of bets one step further. I'm not even going to say he's going to turn it around, but at least give him more time. At least let him sink or swim on his own volition. And that means having as big as an audition and sample size as possible. Getting till the end of the year. Judge him based on that. Come January. Don't judge him based off one game in the snow against the reigning champions.
Sorry about that, John. I bumped Tom off. There he is. Appreciate you again, Tom, up there in Canada. Proven Broncos country is not a geographic location. It is a state of being, baby. He says Locke has to slow the game down. He seems anxious, nervous, not settled. Be himself. I would agree. I would say, honestly, Zach, let me ask you this. Did Locke seem not himself, anxious, settled, unsettled, pressing the first 3 quarters of the Patriots game?
No, he looked poised and in control, having fun out there, loose. The entire team took that complexity on, though, so it's tough to judge.
In week 7, I would agree with you that something, and we talked about this, I don't want to make too many excuses and go way back down the rabbit hole, but that was an outlier game. So many, and he even talked about this today, and I don't think it was said within the scope of a young quarterback making excuses, but it was just a bad game. Move on, learn from it, take what lessons that are there to be learned, and move on because 10 more games left to go, and the Broncos are still in this thing. Like the Chargers are 2-4. Zach, Football Outsiders gives the Chargers 6 times better odds at making the playoffs at 2-4 than the Broncos.
Let him hate. And guys, again, about Locke's interceptions and his slow start, how about Peyton Manning with the Colts? He threw 1 billion picks his first couple years, and he turned out to be a pretty good quarterback. So I'm not saying he's going to be Peyton, but just at least give him some time, guys. At least give him a few more starts. That's all we're saying here.
Yeah, and even and by the way, Carlos jumping in. Appreciate the super, my friend. He says, Carnales, Los Chargers son basura. Hashtag locked in. That means you back, Carlos. Appreciate you, dog. But whoops, sorry, John. Hold on 1 second on that one. My bad. Hold on just 1 sec. James Campbell. Everyone knows James, right? Came up through the ranks. Everyone knows James Campbell. He had a great article yesterday saying basically that the time is the enemy for the Broncos when it comes to Drew Lock, because in the NFL, if a quarterback doesn't come out of the box ready to go, NFL teams, and he lists all the different reasons. Go read the article. It's a good article. And he makes a lot of good points that none of which I disagree with per se. What I disagree with is that it's time to have that conversation. You have that conversation at the end of this year. All right. Right now, those are all decisions and this is our job in media and as fans too, to have these conversations. So it's not that I'm saying that James's article was not appropriate. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just that I'm not even going there yet because I think the Broncos view it the same way. At the bare minimum, they're getting through 2020 and seeing how Locke can play throughout what remains in this season before they draw or jump to any conclusion whatsoever about what happens in 2021 and beyond.
Things take time. I hate to say such an overused sports cliche, but trust the process, guys. This is the process for a young quarterback. This is how it plays out. Just at least, we keep pleading with you, at least give him till the end of the year. If you want to hate him by then, by all means, but at least give him some time to show what he can do.
Noah Fant, I want to bring this up real quick, and then we'll get right back into the supers. And I know we're getting close to our time here, but he talked about today, or excuse me, it was on Tuesday. In fact, let me find it. I jumped past it. Give me 1 second here. All right. On whether or not he believes the Broncos offense can get back on track or can get on track this season. And this was a really, I think, good answer. Quote, I don't have a bad attitude about it, but I'm not happy with the results that we have right now. It's unacceptable with where we're at. We want to be better than what we're doing. The statistics and the conversions, you look at all the numbers, we're not living up to our potential. We have so much ability and so much talent on the offensive side of the ball, and we have to figure out how to make things work. Again, not a bad attitude from my part, still positive about it, but at some point it's like put up or shut up. It's time to buckle down and get these things going. As for me and anybody on this team, we have to be on our P's and Q's and get this thing turned around. And I love that, Zach, because what he's saying is, look, we have too much talent to be ranked bottom 5 in every major offensive statistical category, even with all the quarterback problems they had in the first quarter of the season with Drew Lock's injury. Drew Lock's back. Throw the excuses out. Pat Shurmur, even without Cortland Sutton, even with an injured Phillip Lindsay, we don't know if he's going to make it out of concussion protocol in time for Week 8. All those things considered, Zach, there is so much talent here. Go make some hay while the sun is shining. Because, guys, there's still 10 games that are saying the sun is shining.
And I like what Fan is saying here. He's acknowledging, like, listen, guys, it was a bad loss. It was a brutal loss. It was unacceptable, but let's keep things in perspective. We're not going to take Lockout back and give him the old Yeller treatment. We're not going to – let's keep things relatively calm in Broncos country. We know we have to be better. We're capable of playing a lot better than what we proved on tape last week against the Chiefs. Let us have time to show that. But he's not making any excuses. He's not covering for anyone. He's challenging his teammates, including himself, to be better. That's a sign of a leader. And guys, Noah Fant is the real deal. Anyone, a little aside here, anyone questioning his draft pick shouldn't be anymore. This guy is legit.
You hear that, John? All right. Listen, I'm with you, though, because I was one of those that was a little bit skeptical.
So was I. I came
talking
around
to him at the combine and seeing TJ Hawkinson stand up at the podium and weep when talking about how much he loves football and how much he loves Coach Ferentz at Iowa and all that. I was like, man, this is a guy I'd run through a wall for TJ Hawkinson just based on I was all about him, but he wasn't even an option for Denver. And Noah Fant has long ago won me over. Dennis Woods jumping in, bona fide superstar in Michigan. Love you, buddy. Appreciate you. Lock's stats are on par with most rookie quarterbacks, including Elway's first 11 games. Patience. Hashtag state of being. Hashtag Denver Broncos for life. Amen.
I don't have it in front of me, but again, I reference Matthew Stafford's first 8 games in the NFL. Make you want to poke your eyes out. But that's the trajectory that some young quarterbacks, especially quarterbacks like Stafford, like Elway, like Drew Lock, those gunslingers, it's the type of process they have to go through. They get worse before they get better. It's just how it goes.
Duke, we're really, as I mentioned, we're really sorry to hear about your daughter's miscarriage, and we wish nothing but the best for you and your daughter and your family, and you're in our prayers. So thanks for, I shouldn't say thanks for letting everyone know, but now everyone knows why I mentioned that. So appreciate you, Duke. All right, let's grab Not Allowed here, jumping in. You are allowed here, by the way.
Very much so.
He says, hello, guys. What do you think we need to do to fix the offense so it's more efficient? Well, that's the one thing. Vic Fangio said, he was asked today, in a perfect world, what's your idea of an identity for this offense? And he said efficiency. I just want us to be more efficient. What does that mean? You got to convert on third down. You got to convert in the red zone. That's really what it boils down to. The Broncos have done okay when it comes to moving the ball between the 20s. If they can cut out the turnovers, way too many turnovers the last 2 games. Well, I should say the last five quarters of play, too many turnovers. Cut that out. Be more efficient on third down and in the red zone. A lot of it takes care of itself. Now, getting down to the scheme in terms of X's and O's, I really think the Denver Broncos need to – it's not that you completely dispense, Zach, with the 3 wide and the 4 wide, but you have to be a lot more tactful with how you utilize those personnel groupings. I would quit spreading it out quite so much. Yes. I would start, if you're going to run 3 wide, bunch them up and force the defense to have to think a little bit. Yeah, again, I made a joke talking to Kim Becker the other day about Pat Shurmur. Look, does the guy even know what a slant is? And it's a joke, right? But they threw one, here you go, slants and screens. You threw one slant against the Chiefs, and it was a pick because KJ Hamler didn't haul it in. Yeah, it wasn't a perfect throw, but that's a throw NFL receivers need to catch. Got picked out by the Honey Badger. There are a lot of little things. I think use more 2 tight end sets, and that does mean Noah Fant and Alberto on the field at the same time. Condense the field. Don't go away from what's working for you when it's working for you. That's the one thing that just mystifies me about Pat Shurmur. You dominate in a specific personnel grouping or, on the ground with this collection of guys or this whatever. And then he goes away from it in a key situation, and then it gives him 3rd and long. You got to go with what works. You got to – and I don't even mean dumb it down and simplify it because Drew Lock is not a simple quarterback. I do think even though he's struggled reading the field the last few games, I mean, look at the Texans game, Zach, real quick. I'm going on a tangent here, but look at the Texans game in Week 14 last year. Drew Lock completed – I want to say he completed the ball to 9 or 10 different receivers. He had no problem reading the field in that game. And you could say, oh, well, the Chiefs game, that was his worst. That's an outlier. And that game against the Texans, that was his best. That was an outlier. And you could be right, but it does show us, Zach, that he can read the field. But as coaches, they can help simplify things schematically, and that's what they really need to focus on doing right now.
You mentioned it when you were saying, and later you mentioned it, but when you were saying be more efficient, be better on 3rd down, be better in the red zone, I was thinking, how do you do that? And my answer was your answer, which is play to the strength of your offense, play to the strength of your quarterback. That means getting your quarterback in rhythm, getting him confidence, moving the ball, keep the offense on the field, keep the clock churning, slants underneath to Phillip Lindsay, to Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler. Get the ball in your playmakers' hands. Take the occasional deep shot. Don't keep yourself in a phone booth, but play smart. When you need 3 yards, throw for 5. When you need 2, throw for 4. Don't throw for 40 when you need 3. It's, again, situational coaching. Chad nailed his answer perfectly. A lot of it is on Lock to recognize where to go with those reads. It's not Pat Shurmur on the field throwing those passes, but it's Pat Shurmur on the sideline making those calls. They have to play to the strength of their entire offense, and there's no excuse, Chad. Yes, you're missing Courtland Sutton, but when you have Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon, when you have Jerry Jeudy, a 1st-round pick, KJ Hamler, a 2nd-round pick, Noah Fant, a 1st-round pick, that is enough weapons to make do with. And when you're cutting off half the field and playing in a phone booth, you're doing the entire offense a disservice. So number one, where the offense starts is Pat Shurmur and his play calling and his management of this offense, bar none.
Dale jumping in with a very generous super. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much.
I can definitely upgrade that Wi-Fi now. Thank you, my friend. Seriously, though, that means the world to us, Dale. You know that, my dog. He says, Fangio needs to stay on board. He's shown himself. Defense is balling. When you keep changing the coaching, you tend to have open questions kicking you in the teeth. Is it the new coordinator or the quarterback? Was it play calling or new scheme? There needs to be consistency. And that's something that, if you talk to any of the known insiders, all right, at Dove Valley, if the Troy Ranks and the Mike Klisses. In fact, I think Troy ranked this week on the radio and on record. He was asked, hey, does Pat Shurmur and Vic Fangio return in 2021? And he unequivocally answered right off the cuff, yes, because Dale's point is correct. And that is that the Broncos, not just for Drew Lock's sake, but for the team, they need that coaching consistency. They need that philosophical consistency and continuity. Only in a worst case scenario, like you need almost an entire season's worth of those Week 7 caliber games to fire Pat Shurmur and go to Mike Shula. I know, Kenneth, that's you brought it up as a possibility, but right now the focus has to be continuity. And if you're Pat Shurmur, getting the most out of Drew, changing things up to fit Drew, because it's felt like, Zach, that they've tried to make Drew fit the scheme instead of the other way around, and they need to reprioritize that dynamic.
Yeah, and to Dale's, I agree with his premise, but again, it's not an either or. It's multiple factors. It's not the quarterback or the scheme. It's not the play calling or, the pass on the field. It's all the factors combined, and it just adds up to being one inconsistent, sometimes very hard to watch offense.
All right, guys, we are long here, so let's Zach and I will rapid fire through these remaining supers, and then we'll dip on out of here for tonight. And if we didn't get to your topic or your question tonight, come back tomorrow because it is the Mile High Mailbag, and we'll let our hair down and try and get to as many as possible. The Queen jumping in, showing some love, and bringing some wise counsel here. All right, patience for Locke. Don't give up. The Broncos need consistency coaching, and yes, cocky. They need the cocky. Zach, I love the phrase. And by the way, Christy, we love you. Thank you so much. You know, it means everything to us. But Zach, I love that phrase you brought up because it's so appropriate for so many different elements of life. Sometimes you really do have to fake it till you make it. Yes. And the cocky thing, if you don't have that as a quarterback, some element of your personality, and that's something I doubted in Justin Herbert, just listening to him talk. And he, you know, as a college quarterback, he's proven it out on the grass, though, that wasn't a concern. But with Drew Lock, I don't want him to diverge from the cocky, from the swag, from the rapping Jeezy on the sideline, the loose, right, the dancing before the game and on the field and all that. The Broncos need that energy on the field.
Big cocky Locky. That's how I want him, Chad. That's the quarterback I want. We all fell in love with that aspect of Drew Lock's personality, and kudos to the Broncos for not trying to rein him in and make him something boring like an Alex Smith, just a vanilla personality. That's who he is, and he's going to live and die by that proverbial sword, which is his personality.
He does. He will, and that's absolutely true. And he talked about today that he's going to continue with being aggressive, he and Pat Shurmur, and that's fine on one hand, but at the same time he talked about, hey, Kansas City was shutting down that vertical stuff in week 7, and I kept pushing it. They were forcing us to the checkdowns and the underneath, and I didn't take it. I didn't take what the defense was giving me. And, Zach, that tells me he recognizes where he went wrong and that he can learn from that and improve. Chris jumping back in again. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
He says, should we re-sign Chubb no matter what, like the most valuable defensive player at this point? Yeah, I mean, he's only in year 3, and he's going to have a 5th-year option associated with his deal, so – I mean, it's way too early. If he was a free agent after this year, though, let's just say hypothetically, Zach, yeah, you get him signed up because he just brings so much to the table as the pass rusher, as the energy guy, as a young leader, and then also he's been really good against the run.
And he's also Von Miller's successor. So I would think at this point you do everything to keep him. Not now, like Chad said, they have him under control for a couple seasons. He's not going anywhere, though. And if I had to give you a bold prediction, I would wager the Broncos would rather keep Bradley Chubb over Von Miller. More upside, more youth, more explosion. He's not going anywhere, though. He's here to stay for the long term.
W.E. jumping in. Appreciate you. Bonafide superstar. Since the Texans game, Locke has a passer rating of 70.6. Once teams got tape of Locke, he hasn't adjusted. I just don't think there's been enough sample size to even say there's been enough for NFL teams to really go off. I mean, there's some there, and they're pros, and they know what to look for in terms of tendencies and stuff. So I don't want to oversimplify that, but just give him more time on task with Pat Shurmur. Allow this guy, allow this young quarterback the room to grow instead of expecting him to be. I think the biggest complicating factor here, Zach, is as Drew Lock has kind of hit the skids a little bit, fans look across the division and see Justin Herbert lighting it up and having, just getting praised roundly from across the NFL, and justifiably so. But if you didn't have Justin Herbert on fire in the AFC West as a rookie quarterback, I don't think fans would be quite as panicked and knee-jerky as they have been. But so maybe you remove that from the equation for a minute, all right? Just keep it focused on Locke. Give this kid the time to grow and breathe.
I also think it's the fact that every other team in the West has a young quarterback. Even the Raiders have Derek Carr playing well this year under John Gruden. But again, we haven't seen enough of him yet. And to say that he's a bust or to look at the box score and his passer rating, are we doing that after the Patriots game? If we want to play the if factor and the if game, he should have had a passer rating of 120 against the Patriots. They dropped 3 or 4 touchdown passes. So if we want to look at the box score, it's not going to be pretty, but you don't judge a player, especially a young quarterback, with 9 career starts on the box scores. Just don't do it.
Okay, 3 more, and then we got to dip out. Antonio, good to see you, my friend, jumping in here. Anytime Antonio is in the stream, he's showing love on Super Chat, and it means a lot to us, my friend. So thank you.
Thank you.
He says, I'm confident this year is a great opportunity for Drew Lock to get his feet wet, and our offense should be firing on all cylinders next year. Hashtag Broncos country. Yeah, I mean, it's good to have a long view, and I think it's better to take a long-term perspective on this than to panic right now. But even that is just going too far. just give him 2020 to be himself and do his thing, and don't really don't make more or less of it than that.
Yeah, I'm not even going to say next year. The offense should be fun to watch this year. He's going to have good games ahead as long as he stays healthy. Just be patient. I promise you, better games and victories, most importantly, are ahead for Denver and Drew Lock this year, not next year.
Wow, Dale, you're blowing us away, my friend. Thank you so much. It means the world to us, man. And I don't know what else I can say, but it just goes a long way as well, and it means a lot. So thank you. He says, I'm really glad the team seems to be rallying. It is a great sign, but bad coaching and game planning will be recognized by the players, and if it continues, they will tune out. Let's hope this criticism is well received and Shurmur responds with fire. Well said across all points there, Dale. Zach, I'm going to be really curious to see what kind of tone Pat Shurmur has when he meets with the media tomorrow. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and talks about the media and his response also on Sunday against the Chargers. I'm a lot less worried about how Locke is going to bounce back and a lot more worried about how Pat Shurmur is going to call this game. How he handles getting blown off his own field and looking so incompetent compared to the Chiefs offense, how he handles this game is also a huge litmus test for his own ability. It's not just Locke as well.
All right, we got one from Cody and Huang Ji jumping in. We'll grab Huang Ji first. A name we don't recognize on Super, so welcome and thank you, my friend. Make sure you reach out and connect with us on Twitter. He says, Locke is our QB. He will make young QB mistakes. I'm still on the Locke train. Well said, my friend. Well said. And Cody as well here, and then we'll dip out. From what you've seen so far, what do you expect if this team was healthy and going forward? Also, early predictions for the Broncos, Chargers. Early predictions, Broncos 20, Chargers 10, # Mile High Salute.
Got to wait on that.
You as well, my friend. Yeah, we'll drop some predictions on tomorrow night's pod. We'll have a fully formed opinion on Week 8 for Broncos Chargers. But if the Broncos were fully healthy, and no team is ever fully healthy, right? There's always that one or two injuries. Even the 2013 Broncos, I should think back to all those injuries. How many people did they replace on that Super Bowl 13 defense? How many starters were missing? I guess I should say. I want to say 7 off the top of my head. But the good teams find a way to rise above it. And in this case, you need coaching and quarterback consistency, not just in terms of continuity, but in terms of execution, performance, job performance. And so right now where you've got a young quarterback, all those injuries only exacerbated things. So I think that's just a point that's a little bit moot here, Zach, in terms of where would they be if everyone was healthy. Yeah. I do think they'd be in a better position, but I'm not sure it would have changed what happened last week in against Kansas City, to be honest with you.
Nor the Titans game, because you can have as many healthy players and as much normal as possible this year. Nothing is stopping Pat Shurmur from making that 4th and 1 tight end shovel on the goal line. Nothing is stopping him from going away from Noah Fant. So I happen to agree with Chad. They might be better stat-wise, maybe one more victory, but overall, they'd still be going through a lot of the same struggles because the common denominator is not the offseason or necessarily the players, it's the coaching staff.
Last one here, and it's a doozy. Wow. Stir King 31. I think maybe I've seen Stir King once or twice on Super Chat. Wow, that's a way to come off the top rope with an introduction. Thank you, yes. Stir King. Really means a lot to us, my friend, seriously. And, better late than never at the 11th hour, right when we're about to dip out, but just means a lot. So thank you. He says, why is nobody talking about Rippon? Do we really think Rippon would have been in the red zone 7 times in 2 games and walked away without a TD? What are you saying? That if those balls in those 4 drop touchdowns in week 6, you're saying, if I'm reading you right, that if those were to come off the right arm of Brett Rippon, they would have been caught as opposed to the right arm of Drew Lock? I mean, here's the thing, Zach. Brett Rippon has clearly showed a much better poise and command pre-snap in terms of Sturking saying Rippon threw harder than Lock at the combine. LOL. He has shown a much better command and poise pre-snap, making reads, understanding what the defense is doing, and thus where to go with the ball pre-snap protections and all that. He's a good backup. Coaches love him, and there's a reason for that. He's a guy that takes his job seriously, and between the ears, that's what you need as a backup. But from a talent and a wherewithal perspective and an it factor, he just doesn't have it. There's a reason why he went undrafted. So I like Brett Rippon. I think he's got a lot of upside as a long-term backup for Drew Lock, but that's about as far as I can go.
Yeah, you know what they say, the backup quarterback's always the most popular player on the team, and no exception here. I will say what I said on Sunday's pod and Monday's pod. Brett Rippon wouldn't have won that game. Blake Bortles wouldn't have won that game. Jeff Driscoll wouldn't have won that game. That was a letdown and a failure on multiple levels, not just the quarterback, the coaching as well in that game. And the special teams. We're letting him off the hook as well, McMahon. He was just as bad, his unit, as the offense. The only good unit was the defense in that game. Other than that, it was a categorical failure on at least two sides of the ball.
Cody Potter, and then we're out. He wants to know what's for dinner tonight. I need some ideas. Maybe a Hot Pocket, maybe some ramen. I'm just kidding. I don't know. My mind's on football, but we got to dip out, Cody. Thanks for the support, my friend. It means a lot to us. And for everybody, Super Chat was on fire tonight. You blow us away, gang. We love you, the MHH community and Broncos country. It means everything to us. And, guys, you're the reason that we show up here night after night to do these live streams and commit the time and focus and energy on this content. And, Zach and I love talking to each other. We go a long way back and we're tight bros. But You guys are what keep us coming back. So thanks to each and every one of you. But we really do have to dip out. We're hour 20. We got to go. Follow the pod on Twitter at HuddleUpPod, especially if you're one of our Super Chat superstars. Connect with us, whether it's at HuddleUp or Zach or myself, so that we can shout you out. Also at Mile High Huddle. Follow my partner, Zach Kelberman, at Kelberman NFL on Twitter, myself at Chad and Jensen, and our producer, John Cronenberg. You can find him, at John K. MHH. And then, guys, we'll be back tomorrow night for the Mile High Mailbag. So if we didn't get your question or comment or topic, we will do our best to get to it tomorrow. And then we'll talk a lot more about the Chargers. Let's get off the whole lock thing and start focusing on the next opponent. I think we've exercised those demons and gone down that path as far as we can. It's time for what's next, and we'll get to that tomorrow. So, Zach, have a good night, my brother.
Yeah, you as well. In Broncos country, get off the ledges as well. It's going to be okay. I promise you, don't panic.
All right, guys, for Zach Kelberman, I'm Chad Jensen. We'll see you tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Eastern.
You've been listening to the Huddle Up Podcast. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.